Welcome to the League of Women Voters of the La Crosse area's September Lunch and Learn program on the Electoral College, the history and relevance in modern elections. I'm Jane Powell, president of the League, and on behalf of the board and the program committee, I welcome you and thank you all for coming. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit political organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We work to increase the understanding of major public policy issues and influence public policy through education and advocacy. We act on public policy based on our positions, established through member study and agreement. As a nonpartisan organization, we do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. I'll be introducing Joan Schwarz in just a couple of minutes. She's our speaker. But I just wanted to remind you that the program is being live streamed, so we welcome the people at home that are watching. And it will be recorded for viewing on our website after today. If there's questions at the end that for people at home, they can type them into their chat line on the bottom of their computers. Otherwise, we will have a mic in the room here and have some question and answer time after Joan is finished with her presentation. So I'm happy to invite you to meet Joan Schwarz. She is from the Madison area. Joan is a retired attorney of 35 years, and she's also been a lecturer at UW-Whitewater for 25 years in civics and gender education. She currently serves as the secretary of the board for our state league. She's also the chair of the State Impartial Justice and Redistricting Committee, and she's a member of the state league's legislative committee, focusing on redistricting, court integrity, reproductive justice, and the ERA. She is got a lot of information in her head. She also teaches a 8-week virtual civics class that the league offers to members, and so I signed up and met and did that last spring, and so I met Joan and learned so much from her presentations. So this fall, when the program committee got together and talked about topics that we wanted to address before being an election year, the Electoral College, of course, if you ask people, what is the Electoral College? I would say 2 out of 10 maybe could really tell you. So we decided we were going to talk about that today, the history of it and how it impacts our elections now. So without further ado, we'll bring Joan on here. And there she is. Hello, Joan. Thank you for coming today. And I don't know, maybe you're not from Madison. Which town are you from down there?
Madison.
It is Madison. Okay, very good. Okay, I'm going to turn things over to you, Joan. I welcome you. This is a good crowd today interested in what you have to talk to us about. Thank you.
Jane. So thank you for inviting me to speak to your league. If you could put up the first slide, I would appreciate it. The next one. Thank you. This is a key constitutional provision regarding electors, and it's going to go through it. Each state shall appoint, in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct, a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. Now, the key meaning of this clause is really important. Each state legislature has the plenary power, the full power, to determine how it chooses electors, and is free to have its own plan for selecting its electors. Specifically, this specific constitutional provision is the through line from the formation of the Electoral College all the way till today with the National Popular Vote Compact. Tracing the history of how this constitutional provision has shaped our presidential elections since the founding is important to understand how we are now embarking on a way to change how our presidential elections will hopefully be conducted in the future. Next slide, please. The founders debated a range of ways to select the president, including popular vote, members of Congress, electors selected by lottery, state governors, or by an electoral college. For much of the convention, the election of the president seemed like an unsolvable problem. Each idea had its own problems. Election by popular vote had the advantage of rooting the presidency in popular sovereignty. Some framers, though, opposed this idea based on sheer elitism. However, others didn't so much fear that the American people would be easily.
All right, so you're going to hear a little bit more about me sooner than you thought. Well, we are connected here. Everything's fine on our end. Somehow she must have, but we are texting her, so we'll see. After she's done with her presentation, what I was going to do was talk to you about the way the league's position and approach to this whole method of electing presidents. So, as you will hear, the Electoral College is old, and it was based on some kind of questionable methods of assignment. Do you know how it was assigned? Is she on? Is she on? Good. Is this when we sing the Hallelujah chorus, or is it later? Well, anyway, the League supports National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. And it's a state-by-state legislative effort to, if states adopt it, and red and blue states have adopted it. And the way that it works is that the states would assign all of their electoral college votes to whichever popular, whoever won the popular vote in their state. 17 states have signed on to it. Maine was the most recent one in April, and then DC has signed on. So if the way this National Popular Vote Interstate Compact works, once we reach enough states that have approved it and made it law in their state, and we reach 270 votes, which is what's needed in order to elect the president, then it can become national law. And we're at 209. And so we need 61 more. Now the League really wants, they call it their moonshot mission, is to abolish the Electoral College altogether by constitutional amendment. But we know how hard it is to get constitutional amendments passed. 38 states, you know, people have to get letters from their mother. And so we know that that's an uphill battle. So it's easier probably to address this by National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which is what's happening across the country. Once it happens, there'll probably be legal challenges. There may be some constitutional challenges. But we feel that it's a more equitable way to elect the president and the vice president, which is the only office, as you know, that we elect indirectly through other people. So I just got an email yesterday from Deborah Kronmiller, who's our CEO, and it was all about one person, one vote, which is the new initiative that is phase one of this 5-step long-term process to abolish the Electoral College by constitutional amendment. But in the meantime, the League is promoting every state teach their constituents what the Electoral College is, how it started, and what is a more equitable way to elect the president. And so there's a whole program that they've signed on to that the state of Illinois started with lots of presentations and with the disadvantages of the Electoral College, such as how many states do the candidates worry about when they're campaigning? About 5, maybe 8. My brother in Missouri never sees an ad for the election. And so that's one influence. Everybody is not represented and listened to by the candidates. If we had a broader approach and the candidates had to talk to all the constituents throughout the country, there'd be more input. We all know that we get better decisions when we have more input and ideas and consensus. And that just take it to the larger issue of the country. Another thing is it would be more difficult to object to the outcome of the election when you have electoral votes that you're counting up, and there's 42 that you're trying to find, versus 7 million votes, if it was national popular vote, it would be more difficult to overturn the election results. Those are just two of the things on the top of my head that I can think of. Probably I could have one of you come up and talk and tell us more. But so the other thing is some of the myths that this one person, one vote program works to resolve is the idea that it's a rural versus urban issue. And it's not. I mean, there's only like 5% of the population lives in 3 major cities. It's going to take a lot, of constituents throughout the country to get enough votes to win, 80 million votes or whatever you need to be the president. And so it's not an urban, city, rural, urban situation. And it's also not a big state versus little state, because when you see some of these presentations, they show that putting the different red and blue states together in different, configurations, it still takes about 39 states to get enough votes in order to elect the president. So you can't just say that it's, California, Texas, and New York that are making the difference. They need a lot more states involved. So more states have to be involved than what some people would say is necessary. So when we start looking at the advantages of it, in California, they have 2 Senate seats. And of course, the Electoral College was designated because if you get 1 electoral vote for each senator, so everybody automatically gets 2, and then you get 1 electoral vote for your House of Representatives. And so in just looking at the Senate side of it, that's 100 votes. California has 38 million people. Montana has about 1 million. They both get 2 votes. So the people in Montana are more, are more represented by 2 votes than 38 million people in California. So, is she back on? She's been back on for a while. I'm sorry. So anyway, you won't hear from me anymore. If you're interested in learning about one person, one vote, I've got information. But this will be the end of my spiel. Thank goodness. And then we'll listen to Joan. Thank you.
I am so sorry. I can't believe that happened, but it does. At any rate, I'll go back to this just briefly where I got cut off. And I'm going to leave up to exactly what was being discussed, how we got from the Electoral College to today. And it's key to that phrase that I had up from the constitutional provision: each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. So that gives the state legislature full power to determine how it chooses electors, and it's free to have its own plan for selecting its electors. So the founders debated over how to elect the president. They went through popular vote, members of Congress, electors by lottery, state governors by an electoral college. Okay, so it was really like an unsolvable problem for the founders. Each idea had its own problems. Elections by popular vote had the advantage of rooting the presidency in popular sovereignty. Some framers opposed this idea based on sheer elitism. Others didn't fear so much American people would be easily duped by demagogues, but instead were concerned that the size of the country would make it difficult to carry out a national election and for average voters to know anything about an out-of-state record. In other words, everybody would know right now and love Washington, but in the future, there probably wouldn't be many or any other Washingtons. For some delegates, it wasn't a question of competence, but one of information. The United States, after all, was a larger republic than any ever built. Many citizens were on the frontier, spread out in the country. Information at the time spread slowly, and usually to cities at first. Many rural areas didn't even have newspapers. Therefore, the concern was that these voters would rely on bad information, and this might make them susceptible to manipulation, especially by demagogues. Election by Congress had the advantage of placing the decision in the hands of some of the nation's most knowledgeable leaders. However, the concern was that the result would eventually be, quote, the work of intrigue, of cabal, and of faction, producing a president who would become a mere tool of his supporters in Congress. So they finally got the Electoral College, a body of men who would serve as a check on the uninformed mass electorate. Choice of the president, they believe, should reflect the sense of the people at a particular time, not the dictates of a faction in a pre-established body such as Congress or the state legislatures. They felt the choice would be made decisively with a full and fair expression of the public will, but also maintaining as little opportunity, quote, as possible to tumult and disorder. And then finally, we had Alexander Hamilton, who was really concerned about guarding against dangerous demagogues and leaving the presidential election untimely to the votes, ultimately to the votes of national elites. We have to keep in mind the minority during the founding era was the ruling elite class, and they had a fear of the dangers of direct democracy. They feared the mob, the uneducated people running wild. It was a question of power, how to keep it from being grabbed by the wrong kinds of people. The founders were the classically educated and knew the Greeks and Romans falling under the rules of demagogues and despots. So various concessions were made to those who feared mob rule and despots. Now, all in mind for all of the founders would have been the Shays Rebellion, which happened between August 1786 and February 1787, an uprising in Western Massachusetts in opposition to high taxes and stringent economic conditions. The rebellion symbolized a fatal weakness of the national government under the Articles of Confederation. Because Congress had no power to raise money, it could not help the states pay off their war debts, which forced the states to tax their citizens heavily. Armed bands forced the closing of several courts to prevent execution of foreclosures and debt processes. Farmers seized control of court buildings, preventing the state government from taking possession of their farms. They forced debtors' prisons to close. They attempted to commandeer the arsenal at Springfield, Massachusetts, and their plan was to march to Boston and confront the Massachusetts government. So while the Shays Rebellion did not succeed, it certainly was in mind of the founders at the time in fear of the mob. Next slide, please. Now, there are a number of rationales for the final agreement of the Electoral College. It was settled on finally in the closing weeks of the convention. For those who shared concerns about popular democracy and shared some of the concerns of the other framers about its dangers and limits, the Electoral College offered a balance to them between popular input, congressional and elite input, and federalism. Now, the next clause is the most important that I'm going to be talking about. Individual electors were to be elected by citizens on a district-by-district basis, which I will talk about shortly. The belief was each presidential elector would exercise independent judgment when voting, deliberating with the most complete information available. In each state, electors would vote for all those that were running for president. It would be a safeguard against demagoguery and the mob. It would keep the president independent of the legislature. It would reassure smaller states that they would not be bullied by large ones. The Electoral College would still have the U.S. House voting by state, not by individual members, to decide the president among the top vote getters if no candidate received a majority in the Electoral College. Next slide, please. Okay, what's really interesting here is that the states changed the founders' original intent. So the Electoral College we know today is not what the founders intended. Hamilton and Madison and others believe the original intent regarding the election of the electors was that the election would take place district by district, congressional district by congressional district. The individual electors would be elected by citizens on this district by district basis. Voting for president would include the widest electorate allowed in each state. Each presidential elector would exercise independent judgment when voting. The names of candidates were not on the ballot at the time the electors were elected. Contrast to that was what was called the general ticket. Some state leaders began to adopt the strategy that their favorite partisan candidate among the people in their state would have a much better chance of all the electors selected by their state were sure to vote the same way. So it was called a general ticket. Once one state took that strategy, the others felt compelled to follow suit. in order to compete for the strongest influence in the election. Next slide. So this was a major change to the concept of the original design. As again, I've repeated here, we've got the idea each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. So states did this. Madison and Hamilton argued that when the Constitution was written, all its authors assumed individual electors would be elected in their districts. It was inconceivable that a general ticket of electors dictated by a state would supplant the concept. When Madison and Hamilton saw this strategy adopted by the state's use of the general ticket, voting for a partisan candidate, winner take all, they believed the states were supplanting the concept of the Electoral College. They were so upset by this that they were both going to do a constitutional amendment. Well, Hamilton drafted an amendment to the Constitution mandating the district plan. However, his untimely death and a duel with Aaron Burr in 1804 prevented him from advancing his proposed reforms. Madison also drafted a constitutional amendment that would ensure the original district plan of the framers. However, that never really happened, and Jefferson finally explained to Madison that it was doubtful such an amendment would ever be ratified, saying, quote, "The states are now so numerous that I despair of ever seeing another amendment of the Constitution." So no constitutional amendment was passed because primarily most of the states were using the general ticket procedure. Next slide, please. So how did this all play out? The next slide, please. 1789, the at-large popular votes, the winner-take-all method began with Pennsylvania and Maryland, and by 1836, statewide winner-take-all popular voting for electors had been the most universal practice. Now, Maine, since 1972, and Nebraska, since 1992, have used a district plan. Now, Maine just voted for the compacts, and so we'll just talk about Nebraska right now. 2 at-large electors assigned to support the winner of the statewide popular vote, but 1 electoral vote to the popular vote winner in each congressional district. That meant this creates multiple popular vote contests in these states, which can lead to split electoral votes. It's mathematically impossible for the popular vote winner of the state to do so without winning at least 1 district. So we still have that. Nebraska does have this split vote. Okay, the next slide. Okay, so we have the real concern about this finally getting summed up by a Supreme Court justice in 1833 about the really intent of the Electoral College process being subverted. Quote, "In no respect have the views of the framers of the Constitution been so completely frustrated as it relates to the independence of the electors of the electoral colleges. It's notorious that the electors are now chosen wholly with reference to particular candidates and are silently pledged to vote for them. Nay, upon some occasions, the electors publicly pledge themselves to vote for a particular person, and thus, in effect, the whole foundation of the system, so elaborately constructed, is subverted." Next slide. Legacies of slavery and white supremacy ran deep in American society, and of course, the state's representatives had 3/5 of vote for their slaves, and that was carried over to the allocation of electoral votes. Constitutional design gave white Southerners disproportionate influence in the choice of presidents. In 1816 was the first time there was a resolution calling for a national popular vote. It was derailed by the protestations of Southern senators who would not countenance having their advantage diminished. Even long after the abolition of slavery, Southern political leaders continued to keep the national popular vote off the table, primarily because the filibuster was successful in voting against cloture. The Electoral College was also a bulwark against mounting Northern pressures to enlarge the civil and political rights of African Americans. So we finally, next slide, yes, thank you. So we finally get to the Electoral Count Act of 1887. Okay, it's the United States federal law establishing procedures for the counting of electoral votes by Congress following a presidential election. The law has been criticized soundly as being very confused, almost unintelligible. That's supposed to be unintelligible. Invites misinterpretation. It's turgid and repetition, and its essential provisions seem contradictory. 814 words in length. Is difficult to read and parse. Many of its rules are laid out in sentences of 275 words. It's almost incomprehensible. So the act was proposed in 1887, 10 years after the extremely contentious and disputed 1876 presidential election, in which several states submitted competing slates of electors, and a divided Congress was unable to resolve the deadlock for weeks. The act was created to guide electoral disputes in a divided Congress. The Republican Senate passed 4 versions of the act: 1878, 1882, 1884, and 1886. And the drafting of the act involved large amounts of passionate debate over many of its provisions. Under the law, when it was finally passed, Congress, quote, claimed full power to validate votes. Its role was limited to cases in which a state had failed to settle its own disputes and to questions beyond state competence, was to minimize congressional involvement. Okay, so the making or use of any false writing or document and the implementation of this procedure was a felony, punishable by 5 years. So the act relegated Congress to resolving only a narrow class of disputes, such as if a government had certified 2 different slates of electors, or if a state failed to certify its results under the act's procedures. The central provisions of the 1887 law were never seriously tested in a disputed election. Next slide. Again, I repeat the most important part, that each state legislature shall appoint its slate of electors in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct. So what happens? We get the 12th Amendment. The electors selected by each state must, quote, meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, and then transmit lists of all their votes to the president of the Senate for counting in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Next slide. The Electoral Count Act of 1887 was later codified as Title III, Chapter 1, which is the United States federal law, added to procedures set out in the Constitution for the counting of electors. Next slide. So the electoral process was really important for 2 specific dates. The law requires electors to be chosen by the Electoral College no more than 41 days after Election Day. From 1948 to 2022, the date fixed by Congress for the meeting was on, quote, the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December, next following their appointment. I mentioned 2022 because finally this 1887 Act was reformed by bipartisan agreement in 2022, which I will get to shortly. Under the 1887 Act, however, two dates were relevant: December 8th, the safe harbor deadline for appointing the 538 individuals who make up the Electoral College. This date guarantees that Congress will accept their credentials. The controlling statute says, quote, if any controversy or contest remains after that, then Congress will decide which electors, if any, may cast the state's ballots for president on December 14th, which is the date the electors meet. Next slide. So there's expected delays. There's in vote counting due to later writing absentee ballots and so on. So there are a number of reasons that they're not going to get necessarily everything done by the safe harbor date of December 8th. Important is this clause. There is a single narrow exception to the statutory mandate of the Act that provides that, quote, when a state has held an election for the purpose of choosing electors and has failed to make a choice on the day prescribed by law, the state's electors may be appointed on a later date in such a manner as the legislature of such state may direct. In other words, if the electors were not appointed by December 8th because of unexpected delays, the election could be deemed failed and other electors could be appointed on another date, hence multiple slates of electors. Next slide. So, how did the Trump campaign use the Electoral Count Act of 1887 during the 2020 election? Well, there was a couple of steps. First, declare the 2020 election under the Electoral Count Act of 1887 a failed election because it was fraudulent and meant that states had failed to make a choice of electors on the day prescribed by law. Second, states send in multiple certificates of slates of electors in such manner as the legislature may direct. Third, get one designated representative, one senator on January 6th to object to the certification of states electors, and the presidential election is moved into the House of Representatives, where Trump would have been declared president because Republicans had 26 state delegates and Democrats had only 23 state delegations. The National Task Force on Election Crisis addressed this issue, stating Section 2 does not allow for a loophole that allows state legislatures to usurp the popular vote at any time it appears likely to yield a result that the state views as unfavorable. Attorney Chesbro, inside this plan now, from Wisconsin, drafted the fraudulent elector certificates so that the state legislatures in the swing states decided on their own slates of electors rather than ones based on the decision of its voters. Then Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald reserved a room in the Capitol for the fraudulent electors when the Capitol was closed because of COVID. Most of the 10 fraudulent electors in Wisconsin held positions within the Republican Party and served as Republican Party leaders. They included Andrew Hyde, who was the former Republican Party chair, and Robert Sundell, who is still one of the 6 commissioners on the Wisconsin Election Commission. He still hasn't been removed. Law Forward sued about these fraudulent electors. They all settled and finally said that President Biden did win. What they had to do is provide all the documentation of the fraudulent elector scheme. However, attorneys Chesbro and James Chupas have now been indicted on fraudulent elector charges. So we all know what happened on January 6th. President of the Senate, Vice President Mike Pence, presided over the House and Senate. He received the electoral vote certificates from the 50 states and D.C. At that point, he should have opened the certificates and confirmation that the proper certifications were present. The electoral votes contained should have been counted. The entire process should have taken 30 minutes. But what happened? Well, Pence, under the act, allowed members of Congress to object to the certificates from Arizona and Pennsylvania, which triggered the act's requirement that the House and Senate separate, and after a maximum of 2 hours of debate, vote separately on whether to reject each certificate. The objectors called for a 10-day audit of election returns in disputed states and voted to reject the electors from those states until one audit was completed. The group of objectors was led by Senators Ted Cruz of Texas, Josh Hawley, and Ron Johnson of Wisconsin was also involved. The normal procedure is once multiple slates of electors are sent to Congress and there are objections to a state certification, it's thrown into the House of Representatives. During the debate, in the middle of the debate over the first contested certificate from Arizona, protesters stormed the Capitol, as we all know. Proceedings halted for nearly 6 hours. Once the House and Senate reconvened, 139 of the 221 House Republicans and 8 of the 51 senators voted to reject the certificates from Arizona and Pennsylvania. But because an insufficient number of senators and representatives agreed to not object to the Biden electors after the insurrection, the Biden electors prevailed. Next slide. Okay, we finally get this Reform Act in 2022. It's really crucial, okay? It addresses the ambiguity of the original Electoral Count-Up Act of 1887, which definitely was exploited during the 2020 presidential election. I'm going to go through the changes that were made. This is clearly important for the 2024 election coming up shortly. The definition of a failed election was finally defined clearly. It's now defined as an extraordinary and catastrophic event instead of being able. Secondly, there was now a procedure to resolve disputes about electors and election certification before those disputes reach Congress. Third, really, really important change, higher objection threshold. Instead of just one senator and one representative being allowed to contest it and throw the whole thing into disarray. Now it has to be 1/5 of the members of the House and 1/5 of the members of the Senate are required to object to a slate of electors. Four, clarifies the role of the vice president. It's mainly just a ministerial act. Next slide, please. It identifies the official who is to send forward the state's slate of electors, and it's usually the governor. The Congress cannot accept a slate submitted by a different official and prevents the potential for multiple state officials to send Congress competing slates. 6, it provides expedited security feature on the certificates. In other words, Some kind of security feature must be put on the certificate of ascertainment, the official document identifying a state's appointed electors, as determined by the state before the election, which means that the state cannot change the rules after the voting ends. Each state will define its own security feature. 7, it provides expedited judicial review, which is really new and important, including a 3-judge panel with a direct appeal to the Supreme Court of certain claims related to a state certificate identifying its electors. This process is available only for aggrieved presidential candidates, which allows for challenges made under existing federal law and the U.S. Constitution to be resolved more quickly. And 8, it modernizes rules for counting electoral votes, requires Congress to defer to slates of electors submitted by a state's executive pursuant to the judgments of state and federal courts. To be clear, the Electoral Count Reform Act does not abolish the Electoral College, which is one of the policy priorities of the League. However, reforming the Electoral Count Act is the first step for providing guardrails to govern how presidential election results get from the states to Congress, and finally how Congress handles the Electoral College votes once there. So we go back to the last idea, the first idea we started by, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1, which gives each state legislature the plenary power to determine how it chooses electors. So just as the states did between 1789 and 1836, the states now are can appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors to elect the president by the national popular vote. And as spoken before, when I lost my power, 17 states plus DC have joined the national popular vote interstate compact. 77% of the 270 electoral votes are now in, and the 18 jurisdictions which have enacted this into law include 6 small jurisdictions, 9 medium-sized states, 3 big states, California, Illinois, and New York. I must add that Wisconsin's legislature has voted not to be a part of this. The National Popular Vote Compact will take effect when enacted into law by states processing 270 electoral votes. And so we see the constitutional provision that the founders relied on from the Electoral College, how it was transformed and supplanted early on and was intentionally misled and abused in the 2020 election, and is now being interpreted to ultimately establish a method by which we will finally elect our president, hopefully, by means of the national popular vote. Any questions? Thank you.
Part about the national popular vote, status of that. Joan?
Yes.
Could you please repeat the last part about where it stands with the national popular vote?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Okay. As of April 2024, 17 states plus DC have joined the national popular vote. The 18 adherents of the compact have 209 electors, which is 77% of the 270 required for it to take effect. The 18 jurisdictions include, I can read them off, the 6 small jurisdictions, DC, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, Rhode Island, Vermont. The 9 medium-sized states, Colorado, Connecticut, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, and Washington. And 3 big states, California, Illinois, and New York. And so the National Popular Vote Compact will take effect when enacted into law when they're possessing 270 electoral votes. So we need an additional 61 votes. We can do this just as the states decided that they would change the original 10 of the Electoral College and do the general ticket. We can do this too. The state legislatures have the power to do this, as has been done since the beginning, in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct. And as I noted, Wisconsin legislature has not joined the compact.
Question. You said Wisconsin voted against this. Can this ever be
Yeah.
reconsidered, or is this a deal forever?
Well, we'll see what happens with the November election with the new maps. And yes, it can be voted on again because it is a decision, a resolution that can be passed by the legislature. Yes, it can come up again, hopefully.
And what states are close to doing this? Do you know?
Right, what's close? Yes, I can give you some information there. Okay, so far, it has passed in National County has passed at least one legislative chamber in 7 states, possessing 74 electoral votes in Arkansas, Arizona, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Oklahoma, and Virginia. The bill has passed both houses of the Nevada legislature at various times. The national popular vote has been introduced to all 50 states at different times, and overall, the national popular vote has now passed a total of 43 state legislative chambers in 24 states. So it's moving, and it keeps, being brought up for state legislators to vote on.
Any other questions?
I'm still trying to get my head around what you mean by the national popular vote. I know, where it's, it just doesn't sound to me yet like it's any different from what we already have. So if you could give a more detailed explanation, that would be fine.
Each state now is committed to the candidate, as we talked about how that change happened with the general ticket, of how that state voted, the winner take all in that state. What will happen is that the 209 electoral votes now that have been delegated under the compact will all vote for the winner of the national popular vote, not the state popular vote, but the national popular vote. And so that's the main difference that will happen. And so we have 209 electors committed to vote for the winner of the national popular vote, regardless of what happened in their state. That's the key.
So this is one method of changing the way electoral college votes are counted. But Jane, I think you mentioned a constitutional convention that Deborah Kronmiller? No, they don't. Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
The national popular vote
I can't hear her.
is that the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact doesn't eliminate the Electoral College. So it's still, where a constitutional amendment is, the League's position is to have a constitutional amendment to abolish the Electoral College. So that's a different approach. I mean, one makes a constitutional amendment to change and to eliminate the Electoral College, where the Interstate Compact keeps the Electoral College in place. It's just that it's a different way of allocating the votes.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember, and because we all don't really know about this, the Electoral College had a much different plan than what we are now dealing with. The states, under that constitutional provision, were able to change it to the general ticket. It is not what the founders wanted. The states decided that they could appoint the electors in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct. And so they were able to do it. And that's why Madison and Hamilton were so appalled that that's not what the founders meant, but that's exactly what the states did shortly thereafter. And so what's happening now, and then of course it got stymied during, the Southerners' attempts to keep it from being ever changed. But we have the opportunity now to do just what the states did before. We can't undo the Electoral College, but we certainly can appoint, each state legislature now can appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct. And so we have 209 electoral votes directed to vote for the person who wins the national popular vote. Kind of interesting that we're now doing what the states did before that upset Madison and Hamilton so much and weren't in keeping with the original design. One of the things I think is most interesting is that the Electoral College has such a bad reputation, but there was a lot of thought in going into it, a lot of reasons for the Electoral College, and possibly would have played out much differently over our 200 plus years if it had not gone to the general ticket. But the Constitution, with that language, allowed for states to do as they pleased, and they're doing as they please now.
We've heard a lot of concern about Georgia and what's happening there in preparation for the election. Can you speak to that?
Are you talking about that they're not going to certify the votes?
Yeah.
Yeah. This Electoral Count Reform Act has really closed the loophole of what happened in 2020. You cannot just declare that because you think the election was fraudulent, you can call it a failed election and then, bring in your own slates of electors, which is exactly what happened with the insurrection. So we're talking now about the problem before the election. So we all vote. The next step is the counting and certifying those votes. That's a ministerial position or procedure. And what Georgia has done is they have passed two laws. One law says it's a reasonable, can't remember the exact words, but that each clerk has to have a reasonable understanding that the votes are accurate or doesn't need to be certified. And then pass a second one that even hammered that home even more. Well, that's scary because if we vote and then a county, there are 70 of them, by the way, 70 election deniers have been spread throughout the swing states in the lowest offices in the election county board offices to not certify the votes. So if any county doesn't certify, then the state can't certify. And if the state can't certify, the election can't be called. So what is happening in each of the states that are involved, and they're all involved, is that they're finally getting out a lot of word about the fact that if any of these county clerks don't certify, they're essentially going to be punished by the law. And so a lot of the secretaries of states and the AGs are coming out and really emphasizing this. That doesn't mean, though, it's not going to happen. 20 election deniers in swing states have already denied or refused certification in some some previous elections, not the presidential election, of course. They go to court, and you understand that if each of these then goes to court, that delays the process even further, and so on and so forth. So right now, the biggest threat is whether we're going to get our votes certified so that then each county can get their electoral votes to the state, and the state can announce the winner for the state. I hope that answered questions.
Well, thank you, Joan. I think that's all the questions now. Was there any from the chat? I didn't see. Okay. Thank you very much. And I apologize for any earlier disruption, but we appreciate your information. Thank you.
Well, I apologize for the disconnection. Thank you very much.
So this was the slide I was going to show. This was the position in 1970 of the state of the full League of the United States. So we'll just proceed on, and I think you've learned as much as you need to learn. There is this website you can learn more. about the national popular vote. The other thing is, as Deb Luchin reminded me, that we have done programs of this in the past. There are some PowerPoints and information available at our website that we can post links to. And so if you're interested, go to our website and find out more detail about this information. I'd like to have Leslie come up and talk with us now. She's our forums chairperson, and she's going to give us an update on the status of our forum situation.
Thank you, Jane. Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to give you a quick update because when we last met in person, it was May. We were preparing for an August primary. We were able to post a successful event, I think, as we did an online forum for the 96th Assembly primary candidates. That was held at the end of July, and it went very well. We also were cooperating with the Lacrosse Debate Consortium coalition, which we've been a part of for quite a while. They were trying to get a forum or a debate scheduled between the 3rd Congressional District primary candidates. That did not happen. And the reason that it didn't happen is because we could not get agreement on date or participation by all 3 candidates at the same time. So going into this November election, we are going to, unfortunately, run into this trend more and more. And probably some of you have read about this. We've seen it happening more and more, where candidates decline to participate in a forum in person or online. They just choose to sit it out, which does not allow us to go forward because League is not in support of empty chair forums. Thank you. So that's where we're at, the kind of the situation we are in going into fall. Immediately after our July forum, we were contacted by a couple of partners who wanted to reach out to us and ask us to partner with them in co-hosting events going into this fall election. One was the Vernon Women's Alliance. Again, we were trying to schedule a forum for the 96th Assembly candidates in Westby. We just found out last week that Representative Oldenburg is declining to participate in that, so the Westby Forum is not going to happen. But the other positive development is that League was invited to sit down with Anthony Chergowski from the UWL Political Science Department, and also Brandon Yates, who is the Government Relations Director for the La Crosse Chamber of Commerce. And they are very much interested in reviving the idea of a debate coalition that would maybe be more encompassing of more formats. So we are starting to call our group the Civic Engagement Coalition, and we are working on trying to get some events put together for this fall. And so just a quick update on where we are at with that, because we are doing a couple of different things in a couple of different ways. Anthony Chergowski from the university is contacting our state legislators and hopefully getting debates established. They're going to be broadcast debates. They're going to be an invited audience, not an open public forum, but looking to make that happen in mid-October. So hopefully more information available on that. The Chamber of Commerce at this point has gotten agreement from both 3rd Congressional candidates about hosting a town hall forum. Again, not a public event, for members only, by invitation. So far, I believe they have a date scheduled for Representative Van Orden, but Rebecca Cook's campaign has agreed but has not given us a date on which to host that. So hopefully more information. League of Women Voters, your busy forum coordinator, has been working on an event for also another ballot issue that's coming up for La Crosse voters, which is the school district referendum. And we are going to be co-sponsoring an issues forum on Thursday, I believe it's Thursday, October 3rd, and we're working out the details on that this week. It will be at the Nature Place at Myrick Park in the evening. We are going to have a panel discussion, a moderated Q&A, and it will be hopefully live streamed and recorded so that people can see it before Election Day. I'm very encouraged by the fact that this new civic engagement group, this coalition, wants to definitely work together and start working on some commonly accepted guidelines for the different types of events that we foresee doing together in the future. So town halls is not a usual or typical approved format at all for League. And so that we are consulting with our state office to see what can we do? How can we be involved? We would like to work with this partnership, but they understand it's within our guidelines. Our guidelines are non-negotiable. So we are a nonpartisan organization. That's our position. That's what has to be adhered to for us to participate. But to me, that's very good news. I'm very encouraged by the sit-down that we had in the middle of August, and we're continuing to converse a lot about how we can optimize all of our individual efforts to get information to voters before elections. So hopefully I will have more news for you as we go into 2025, because election cycles keep coming and they change and we have to adapt. So thank you very much. If you're interested in being part of our education forum, send me an email or stop me today, because we have a moderator lined up, but we could use some League folks collecting questions from the audience on note cards. So you're very welcome to participate. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's your full update on our situation with the forums. So thank you for all your hard work. We all respect Leslie hugely in her work with these other organizations. So that's the end of the program. I just wanted to make a few announcements. September 30th is the book club. Kamala Harris's book, The Truth We Hold, will be the topic. There we go. And it's always a lively discussion. You don't have to have read the book, but you can check the website and participate even if you haven't read it. Of course, September 18th, you all know about our big centennial celebration, so that's going to be a lot of fun at the Cabela Center, and David Mark will be there playing the piano. There'll be a premiere of our Get Out the Vote video that Voter Services has been working on this year. So that's going to be a wonderful celebration, and thank you to our generous donors as well. Registration will be open soon on the October 9th Pay to Play Politics, a call to action. That's another governmental type issue that the League is involved with thinking about. Let's see, the town hall. I got an email this week that I was asked to announce. Tonight at the WTC Lunda Center from 6 to 8 o'clock is La Crosse Town Hall, and the topics are healthcare and climate change. This is held in conjunction with the UW-Madison La Follette School of Public Affairs, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and the Sustainability Institute. There's going to be 3 speakers and a moderator, and there's more information and flyers on the back table if you're interested in going to that. I want to remind everybody that make sure you have a plan to vote. Vote early if you can. Absentee ballots will go out September 19th. And we don't want long lines at the election day. That could be COVID or a snowstorm, who knows. So try to make sure you have your plan, and Vote 411 is up to date right now with the election for November 5th, so that's a good reference. The constitutional amendment another state constitutional amendment will be there about a citizenship question. It's important to know about that. The League does not support passing that, so we do have a vote no stance on that. But and then the school referendum, of course, we'll learn more about that so that you can make an informed decision. I think that's it for today. It's a lot of information. I appreciate you so much, your patience and everything. So thank you, and hope to see you at one of our future events. Bye.